All right, good morning, everyone. I'm going to call Commerce to order. Good morning, Senators. Thank you for being here. The first thing we're going to do is refer House Bill 577 to the Housing Subcommittee. So we've got that for you, Senator Murphy. Our first bill this morning is House Bill 98, and I believe I'm going to open the hearing on that. I believe we have Representative Eric Turer here to present the bill. Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. As noted, I am Eric Turer, representative from Brentwood, here to present House Bill 98 relative to professional limited liability company assistant manager status. Don't know if any of you were here last year. This bill will look awful familiar. It's identical to a bill that came before this committee last year. And at that point, it was House Bill 1082. It was drafted in response to a constituent need. A member in my community who is a longtime veterinarian practice run by the veterinarian and her husband is the manager of the practice, been in business for a long time. As it came time to prepare for the latter days of their time in practice, their business attorney sort of pointed out some issues with the way that individual PLLCs can plan for the future. So just about the bill last year, it actually came before my committee, Judiciary in the House, had a small amendment, passed out at Judiciary, passed on the floor, came over here, and another member of my committee, who is a lawyer, had gotten the sense that the Bar Association wanted to weigh in on the bill, and asked if they could delay the exec session until they had a chance to do that. Unfortunately, it was the end of the session, and there was no way to do that, so the bill went to interim study. Subsequent to that, the Bar Association did not raise any questions about the bill, and they did not come to our hearing on the bill this year as well. The bill passed unanimously out of Judiciary and passed on a voice vote in the House. I'll just briefly explain the bill. So it affects Section 304D, which governs the practice of professional limited liability corporations. It pertains only to solo practice limited liability corporations, so where there's only one professional member. And so those entities, those legal entities, are sort of a combination of a group of professionals providing professional services and also a corporate structure for those individuals. And so that's where the dilemma comes in, because you have to be a qualified person, is the term in the law, in order to be a director of the corporation. And so if the solo member, who is the only, qualified person in the organization, either dies or becomes incapacitated or disqualified from the profession, any of those three, there's basically no one available in the corporate structure to take any corporate actions. And so what this does, it allows the assistant, and a new sort of term of assistant manager, who does not normally exercise any of those rights, but if that one solo qualified person becomes disqualified, would for 1 year, so it's not indefinite, be allowed to operate, in the corporate capacity while not being able to provide any professional services. So this would allow the corporation to hire a new professional, would be able to sell the corporation to another entity, convert to a different corporate structure that might work better. But right now, the only option that they have available, and this is how it's handled, is they sort of form a sort of non-official alliance with some other professional that should this happen, that person will step in out of their personal practice, and essentially the only thing they can do is dissolve the organization. So, it's value to the community, it's value to the, family of the professional essentially dissolves for no necessary reason. And the bill was amended briefly just to really clarify that this does not allow that person to do anything other than operate the organization as a corporation, but not as a professional. So let me wrap it up there, and
Okay.
glad to take any questions.
All right. Any questions? All right. Don't have any, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Amanda Grapponi Osmer has signed up to speak. Good morning.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for coming.
My name is Amanda Grapponi Osmer. I live in Sanbornton, New Hampshire, and I'm the owner of Grapponi Automotive Group in Bow and Concord, New Hampshire. We've been in business for 101 years now in the Concord area, and I am speaking against the bill that would kill the state inspection law here in New Hampshire.
Oh, that's the third bill.
Oh, dang. My
So,
apologies.
yeah, you can take a break and
I'll go hang out in the back.
we'll pick it up at 9:50 a.m. So
Okay, thank you.
We'll put you on the list for that. All right, is there anyone else who would like to speak on House Bill 98? All right, seeing none, we will close the hearing on House Bill 98 and we'll go into recess for just a few minutes. Running on fumes. All right, we're going to bring commerce out of recess. We would like you to keep the aisleway clear, so if you could take a seat, that'd be great. And if there isn't one, maybe wait in the hall until the next bill comes up, House Bill 649, which will be after House Bill 307. And I'm going to open the hearing on House Bill 307 and welcome Representative Bixby to tell us about his bill. Good morning.
Good morning. For the record, Representative Peter Bixby, Dover, New Hampshire, Stratford District 13. And so under current law, if you are producing homestead food, you need to be producing it in the kitchen of your residence. And this is and all of the rules that in the food protection regulations are based on that assumption that it's going to be happening in a kitchen, and that has provided a sort of shortcut for assuming that all of the equipment that one would have in a kitchen is available, such as a sink and stove and cleanable surfaces, etc. We had a request from a constituent who pointed out that there are some situations where you might want to be able to produce food in a different area of your home rather than the kitchen. And it sometimes depends on the layout of the home. If you have a very open plan kitchen, then that might not be the best place for producing homestead food because you have more trouble controlling access, etc. One person pointed out that one of the problems with producing homestead food is that you sometimes have children and spouses wandering through and sampling the products, which makes it more, and it's easier to control that if it's in a separate room. But that there wasn't, under current statute, there's not really an option for that. So what this bill does is it creates the option for having an alternative food production area in the home for doing homestead food, and it lays out what sorts of sanitary equipment or sanitation equipment and sanitation conditions need to be present in that food production area to have it qualify as an appropriate area for homestead food production. So it has things like making sure that there's a hand washing sink, making sure that there's appropriate equipment and food storage capacity, making sure that food contact surfaces are all entirely cleanable, making sure that floors can be cleanable, make sure that you can exclude pets from the area, we worked. We amended our first shot at it with the help of the people from DHHS Food Protective Services to make sure that we got the language right in terms of what the conditions needed to be. So I'd be happy to take any questions.
All right. Any questions, Senator Fenton?
Thank you, Representative, for taking my question. We've seen a lot of these homestead food operation bills this past year. Are these homestead food operations subjective to the meals and rooms tax?
They are not, because they are not restaurants. They are they don't. So this is if someone is, for instance, they're making cakes and cookies in their house for sale at a farm stand or for sale at a farmer's market. So this is about food production rather than the process, rather than the way that goes into sale. So this is entirely separate from, for instance, a bed and breakfast or an occasional food service. It is strictly the capacity to make food for retail sale, either out of your home, out of a farm stand, or at a farmer's market. Is also possible to sell it with certain restrictions to sell to wholesale to retailers, but it is not something that it has to do with rooms and meals.
All right, any other questions? Senator McHugh?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for taking my question, Representative Bixby. Are the terms in hand washing and et cetera in line 7, 9, 11, 13, are they defined elsewhere in statute where we could just incorporate the same definitions by reference?
I am not certain of that. I believe that, I think that, no, for the sake of this bill, it's necessary to to define them in this bill rather than rather than a reference to another area of statute and I think most of those are typically defined under rules, and it's bad practice to define something in statute by referring to a rule. But in order to, for the regular food service licensing statutes, the statute says the department shall take care of these things under rules. In order to make this bill work for the essentially to carve out an area that is atypical from the way that it's dealt with in rules, we needed to have them defined in statute rather than doing it in rules. And I think that there's probably someone from DHHS who can provide the mechanics of that better than I can.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you, Representative.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Representative Aaron, please come forward. Good morning.
Good morning. So for the record, I'm Representative Judy Aaron, and I am Chair of Environment and Agriculture Committee in the House, and I represent Sullivan County District 4, which are the towns of Ackworth, Goshen, Langdon, Lemster, and Washington. And just thought I'd say a few words, in support of this bill, and, to Senator Fenton's question about, seeing all these homestead bills coming. Many of these bills came out of a study committee that we did last year, looking at making some changes to the homestead food statutes, because there were people who came to us who are folks who do food production in their home or on their farm, in their farm, and they had some different concerns about things that they'd like to see in statute, and that's where all of these bills are coming from. So we support our committee supported this unanimously, this particular bill, and I hope that you will too. We see that, insofar as like food production areas, rather than just being in your kitchen, somebody might have an outbuilding that they can tailor specifically to doing their work to get away from the kids, the dog, the whatever, the husband, whatever, their wife. and we just felt that rather than confining food production to their kitchen, that they may be able to use some other area on their property.
All right, thank you. Are there any questions?
Thank you.
All right, appreciate your testimony.
Sure.
DHHS is here, and we have Ms. Davis and Robert. If you'd please come forward. Good morning. Yes, thank you.
Good morning, members of the committee. My name is Michelle Roberge. I'm the Bureau Chief for Public Health Protection within the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Public Health Services. The department doesn't have a position. The department is neutral on this bill, but we're happy to share some talking points. And I'm going to let my colleague, Erica Davis, introduce herself and then share our testimony. Thanks.
Okay.
Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today on House Bill 307. My name is Erica Davis. I'm the administrator for the Food Protection Section within the Department of Health and Human Services, Division of Public Health. As Representative Bixby mentioned, this bill would allow for food production to happen in areas outside of the homestead operator's residential kitchen. We originally had some concerns with this bill because if you take the food production area and move it outside of a kitchen, the basic requirements of a food production area are not necessarily spelled out without having kitchen in the definition. We did work with the sponsors of this bill to outline some of the sanitary requirements that we would look for if someone was moving their operation outside of a residential kitchen into another space in the person's primary home. Again, these sanitary requirements were outlined within the amended bill, and we were happy to look those over and work with the committee on those.
All right, thank you. Senator Murphy.
I'm curious, if somebody has a homestead food operation and they're successful at it and they grow and they add one to their house and they move their production there and they're very successful and they add on again and they add on again, at what point are they subject to inspection and licensing and all that stuff? At what point would this no longer apply for them?
So under the homestead allowance, there are a couple different avenues that homestead operators can take. They can be an unlicensed homestead operator where they're limited to where they can sell their products. We have a licensed homestead operation where they're allowed to sell their products in retail food stores or over the internet. Where we would look to have them, well, currently, once they move outside of that residential kitchen is where we move them into the new category of a commercial processor, where they fall under different requirements in rule. So currently that kind of is our break-even point, I guess, if you want to say it that way, is when they move outside of that residential kitchen. So we do have operators currently who have started as a homestead, have converted a garage or a basement or an outbuilding, a shed, to meet sanitary requirements. However, we move them into the license class of a commercial processor.
Okay, Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for coming to provide the department opinion or department expertise on this. Can you answer my earlier question about the terms hand washing equipment, food storage, et cetera? Are they only in the health rules and not in statute?
So those definitions are in rule, but our rules, the sanitary protection of food, is HEP 2300. We adopt the federal food code, and the majority of the definition and codes that are here are in rule.
Follow up? Thank you. So do we need to create separate definitions instead of the ones that are in 2300 unique? Or so do we not define them anywhere else in RSA? They're only in 2300?
Correct, because homestead food production is kind of separate. So the homestead food operators do not follow the retail food rules defined in 2300. They're like their own separate category in statute.
And if I may add, some homestead are exempt from licensure, so that's another reason.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate you being here.
Thank you.
Addie Leader Zavos signed up to speak. Good morning. Welcome back.
We are a small working
Oh, thank you. Obviously not very familiar with this process. So HB 307 kind of came out of the idea to address problems for three types of producers. The first type is people who are expanding their businesses and need a little bit more space before they're ready for a commercial production facility. The second is for people who are doing really intricate cakes and cookies. And the third is for people with very tiny kitchens. So the first group is really similar to what me and my husband are at in our business right now, which is that our primary residential kitchen is just not quite big enough for the type of work that we're doing. And that can happen really quickly for producers, especially because things have to cool completely before you're able to package them. And every item that you sell has to be packaged. So you really need a lot of space to fully cool things to make sure that there's no condensation on it. And so where we are is we would really love to be able to take our dining room, which is right connected to our kitchen, and put our bread in there to cool instead of having it like stuffing more and more shelving into our main residential kitchen. So that's one type of producer, and people like us are usually on the road towards wanting a commercial facility. Our plan is to build a commercial kitchen on our property and put it into our carriage house, which is where our farm store is. The other type of producer that this is designed for is people who are doing really intricate cookie and cake work. So I'm sure you all have seen the type of cookies that I'm talking about, where it's a very elaborate set for a baby shower and it has these really cute details and all these like color coordinated things, and it's custom work. Or cakes that are like in the shape of a handbag or the shape of a shoe that are celebrating someone's like 100th pair of shoe that they bought and they want to have a $100 cake to go with it or whatever. This is one of the most lucrative types of business that a solo operator can do because it is based almost completely on skill. So you're not looking at volume, you're not looking at, how much you can sell wholesale. You're talking about a skill you can develop by watching YouTube, and that's how you're going to build money for your family. That type of work relies a lot on drying. So things like royal icing and fondant are really delicate. They need to dry in a very particular way, and they need to not be disturbed when they're being in their sort of drying state. That's really hard when you have 3 kids and it's your family kitchen and you're also supposed to be making lasagna for dinner. How are you supposed to have these elaborate sets that you're making $200 or $300 on, which is a big chunk of change for your family, if your kids are going to be like getting their smudgy fingers in it, or you're worried about your husband eating the cookies that are cooling because he didn't realize they were for a set, he thought they were the family ones or whatever. And so the idea is to allow people to have a separate space that's closed off from the family kitchen that still meets all of the same sanitation requirements and the same goals as your home kitchen, but is separate from your kids, your husband, whatever. And then the third group of people that this bill is designed to help is people who have really tiny kitchens. So people come into becoming home-based producers from all different walks of life. You have people who are doing it as kind of like a little side business, and their husband is already a stockbroker and he makes a lot of money, and they have huge kitchens as big as this with 2 islands, and they're filming their little, YouTube things or their TikTok videos. And then you have people who are in tiny little apartments, and this is their side hustle that they're really trying to make ends meet. And those people would love to expand into their dining room, or into a spare bedroom or something like that, but they can't do it right now. And that's kind of the idea behind the bill. There are a lot of safety provisions written into this, and I wanted to sort of address some of those questions that people asked. I kind of just have them in the order that you asked them. Senator Fenton, I know you asked about meals and roads tax. So home-based food production is treated the same way groceries are because it's a packaged food. So anytime that you go to a restaurant or you go to a food truck, anything that's not packaged, that's ready to eat, that's subject to meals tax. But something that's like on the store at a grocery store is not subject to meals tax. And so that's the same way that because everything is required to be packaged for a home-based producer, it falls into the same category. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that question.
Yeah. And then I know.
Would it be all right if Senator Fenton?
Can I ask a question on that?
Oh, yeah, sure.
So if a restaurant sells, say, their own food that's packaged in a jar or something similar, are they subjected to rooms and meals tax?
I don't know, but Senator Murphy, I know you run restaurants, so you might know.
The answer is no. It's taken out it's meant to be taken out and not put on the premises. And it's not packaged, like, just to go. It's actually a sealed container that can be sold without tax.
Yeah, I believe it's the difference between ready to eat versus packaged. I know there was a question about when is it necessary to have licensing? So how big can a producer become? I think that's a great question. There's a really simple line in the sand, and that's TCS food. If you want to make something that has to be refrigerated, you have to become licensed and you have to work in a licensed facility. And so that puts a really strong line in terms of how big your business can become, because it's really hard to grow as a bakery if you can't do pumpkin pies. And then there was another question about, I think someone mentioned having an outbuilding. That's actually not part of this bill. This bill restricts it to within the primary residence. So you can't have a barn that you convert into a production kitchen because it's not part of your primary residence. So there is some built-in structure around, like, can you become a factory, but it's at your home? You can't. It's written into the law that it has to be part of your primary residence. And then there was a question about the language in the bill, whether it's defined in statute. So interestingly, almost no food safety regulations are defined in statute. They're almost all through rules, which is HEP 2300, as I think Erica mentioned. These specific things in the bill have fairly well understood implications or definitions within food safety. However, the places where they are defined in terms of food safety by statute largely don't apply to home-based food producers. So, for example, I know Erica mentioned the FDA food code. So home-based food producers are actually, I think by statute, excluded from the FDA food code because the way that the food code is written, there are a lot of details about the production facility that don't apply to home-based producers, and it's very quantitative. So you'll find things like, within a storage area, you must have at least 17 candles of light. And that's just woven in throughout the entire 700-page food code, are all these little details that don't really translate to a home-based situation and aren't strictly necessary for food safety, but are more about being able to make the regulations very predictable for inspectors. And so I think it is important to keep those safety elements in the bill because they aren't really defined anywhere else in statute or in rules. They're defined in rules, but they're not applied to home-based producers, if that makes sense.
All right. Thank you. Any questions? All right. We don't have any more, so
Okay.
thank you. Appreciate
Thank you very
your
much.
testimony. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on House Bill 307 and didn't sign up? All right, seeing none, we'll close the hearing on 307. We're going to recess for a couple of minutes and commence with 649 next. Yeah, thank you. I appreciate the support. All right, we're going to come out of recess and open the hearing on House Bill 649. And we have the prime sponsor here, Representative Granger. Good morning.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, and members of the committee. So my name is Representative Granger. I'm representing Stratford 2, Rochester Ward 5, Milton and Milton Mills. And I want to start by saying the goal of the bill is to eliminate mandatory vehicle inspections. It's drafted in such a way as to keep the safety laws themselves intact. And there is a massive amount of support for this bill, and I'm sure you guys have noticed. But I'm amenable to tweaks and changes to the bill that don't undermine the central point of the bill, which is to get rid of mandatory vehicle inspections. So for instance, if there was a study committee, I would oppose, I personally would not like a study committee. It's your guys' bill at this point. You can do whatever you want, but I wouldn't like that very much. Any changes to make it a biannual mandate, I would also not very much like that. However, but if you guys do have if there's some language in here that you guys don't like, but that doesn't have anything to do with the actual point of the bill, which is to get rid of the mandatory vehicle inspections, then I'm perfectly happy to work with you guys on the House side to accommodate. So with that, I'll be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, appreciate your testimony.
Thank you very much.
All right, so we have a lot of people signed up to speak on this, and try to keep it to 3 minutes if you can. If you have written testimony, I'd ask that you submit that and then just summarize your testimony in your remarks. We do have a hard stop at noon. So in the event not everybody gets to speak, we'll have to carry it forward to next week. So again, I'd ask that you be as concise as you can possibly be. All right, Representative Manuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. For the record, my name is Tom Mannion. I'm representing Hillsborough 1, Pelham. I'm in support of this bill. So one of the things when I was trying to get support for this up in the House, I managed to draft a spreadsheet that did an analysis of vehicle fatalities across all 50 states. And I also correlated that against insurance rates. I correlated that against DUI rates and snowfall. And I found that there was no correlation between mandatory safety inspections and fatality rates of automobiles. And there's also, there's a whole host of states that are in what's known as like the snow belt and all that. So we have like Montana and let's see what we got here. Montana, Michigan, the Dakotas, and none of these states have like an increase because they don't have safety inspections, but there's no correlation here that says that they're getting, bodies left, right, and center on the side of the road due to not having these safety inspections. They have just as much snow as us. Alaska, notably, very snowy, doesn't have vehicle inspections. Then I looked at insurance rates, and two of the highest insurance rates in the entire country is Louisiana and New York. Both of those have annual safety inspections. I showed this to a lot of my colleagues on the other side of the wall, and I think it's what got it to you guys, because the data speaks for itself. The Government Accountability Office in 2015 also did a study on this. And they said that there was less than, it's like somewhere between 2 and 7% of all automobile accidents were caused by component failure. And I think that big spread is because some of that data is from self-reports. So people who had gotten a crash on the side of the road, they would report, my brakes went out. And there was no investigation done. If there was like a insurance involved and they collided with somebody, then I'm sure the insurance agents would come down and do a full crash investigation. But if somebody's just like writing down, this was caused by component failure, that's not necessarily trustworthy. And that is across the board, 50 states. So 2 to 7%, 50 states, and only we're like one of 15, less than 15 states that do any kind of annual or biannual safety inspections. So I'd say that I think the numbers and the data speak for themselves, that these inspections do not increase safety. Having inspections does not have any effect on insurance rates. If anything, the only thing that I could found correlation here is DUIs cause more car fatalities. No surprise there, but I'm happy to take any questions.
All right, any questions, Senator Rishardi?
Good morning. Thank you for taking my question. So I was doing a little research, and it appears that the other states that don't do inspections, they do have mandated auto insurance, and New Hampshire doesn't. So are you thinking that we should have mandated insurance?
I wouldn't say that because I think our rates are more competitive because we don't mandate it. As we learned with the American Care Act, as soon as you mandate that somebody has to carry insurance, it actually causes rates to go up because now it's a government mandate that we all must purchase something. Some would say that these mandatory vehicle inspections are causing increase in price of repairs because we have to get them.
Follow up?
Of course.
So being a fiscally responsible person, can you tell me what would be the financial impact of terminating the Gordon Darby contract early? Would there be any penalties or unrecoverable costs or additional expenses that the state would incur or be a burden to the taxpayer?
I can't speak to that. As far as a burden to the taxpayer, though, this wouldn't completely agnostic from paying the $40 for the sticker. The burden is very high already on the taxpayer for having to get a lot of times unscrupulous shops will take people through the ringer. I do have a small anecdote. I did go get my car inspected a couple months ago down the street in one of the shops. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus, but they handed me a bill for $2,800 of things that I should get fixed. One of those items was something I had just replaced a couple months prior, which led me to believe that the rest of the list is kind of bogus. And I think because I had rep plates, they didn't push the issue, but I don't know what an average citizen, an elderly person, a female, I'm not sure if they went in there, if they would have been just given a suggestion or they would have just been failed for any of those components.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any further questions? All right, appreciate your
Thank you.
testimony. Thank you. Representative Farrington, are you here? Good morning, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Sam Farrington. I represent Rochester Ward 4. I'm here today in support of ending the sticker scam. I call it a scam for two reasons. Number one, inspection shops are scamming vulnerable customers into the thousands of dollars. And we'll hear testimony today about that. But number two, it's a government scam. It's a government scam because the government's telling us that this program is justified. Government, by coercing people to have mandatory vehicle inspections, is saying that it ought to be effective. Well, what does the study show? What does the data show? Representative Mannion just talked about some data that he compiled, but I want to talk about one specific study by Alex Hoagland and Trevor Woolley. They looked at New Jersey. In 2010, New Jersey repealed their mandatory inspections. And so this study, it's a difference in difference study, which is basically the gold standard of policy impact studies. And so they looked at lots of data, very comprehensive data, over 500,000 observations of crashes and some fatalities across the country. And what they found was, number one, they isolated the data. So they isolated it and they found which accidents were actually because of component failure. And so using the difference in difference approach, they looked at New Jersey, which was the treatment state, and they compared New Jersey to other control states, which would be the counterfactual in the study. And the effect of the study was that there was no causal relationship between mandating inspections versus not. In other words, it's ineffective. It's just not necessary. And in fact, it led to millions and millions of dollars of taxpayer savings for New Jersey specifically. Now, New Jersey, I believe they were the second most, well, actually Texas repealed theirs this year, but New Jersey is the most recent state in which there is an actual study, a comprehensive study on the policy impact of the state. Only about 11, I think 10 or 11 states still require mandatory inspections. And it's funny that New Hampshire is one of them. I mean, we're the live free or die state. We're supposed to lead the nation, yet we still are scamming Granite Staters. You might ask yourself why? Well, there's a very powerful and influential auto lobby here in New Hampshire. And as legislators, it is our responsibility to represent our constituents, not to line the pockets of the auto industry. And with that, I welcome any questions.
All right, any questions? All right, thank you, Representative. Appreciate it very much. Oh, let's see here. We have Representative Stephen Smith. Good morning. I went in order.
I recognize you too. I've seen you around.
A couple times.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee for taking the time to hear me today. I'm Representative Stephen Smith, Sullivan County District 3, Charlestown, Newport, and Unity. I have seen this movie before, so I'm not going to talk about the safety program. What I really want to hammer on is the real criminal in all this, the OBD portion of our inspection program, onboard diagnostics. A local shop owner where I live said it best, it kills a lot of cars that don't need to be killed. We have inspections for two reasons, safety and emissions. Then why are we looking at codes that have nothing to do with either one? Some current examples. The 2003, it did need to be plugged in when this happened, Jeep Liberty throwing a clutch code error. And since there's no transmission light, that puts on the engine malfunction light and means it can't pass. So clutch code, it was an automatic, didn't have a clutch, and it drove fine. It shifted at the correct RPMs. It didn't slip. It was tested on-road, off-road. In order to get this thing past an inspection, what are you going to do? Start following some electronic nightmare? Change the transmission. By the way, the transmission was probably cost more than what the vehicle was worth. It's silly, and it has nothing to do with emissions. And I'm surprised that we haven't been sued over this because the statutory authority for the OBD program is emissions enforcement, and this has nothing to do with that. Right now, I know someone that has a 2010 Volvo XC70. It was throwing a catalytic converter code. So they had an aftermarket one put in by their shop. They said that should be fine. It wasn't. It didn't clear the codes. Then they had to put in a factory one. By the way, that's expensive. But here's the problem. When you fail for an emissions issue on the OBD portion, now you have 60 days to correct the issue. At the end of that, you can't drive the vehicle legally anymore. So they had to change one catalytic converter, now another one. The 60 days is up and they have a choice. They can drive the vehicle illegally to reset the drive cycle so that it can be inspected again, or park it. And they sadly are going to let this vehicle go. Now they're in a position to make that decision. I'd submit that low or moderate income people faced with this choice, what are they going to do? They can't just go buy another car. I mean, I applaud people that say that's the solution, but not everyone is in that financial situation. It's time to end this. As chair of the Transportation Committee for 4 years previously, I tried to get reforms to this system and failed. It's a lockbox, and there seems there's nothing we can do about it. Well, there is one thing we can do about it. We can get rid of it. So, members of the committee, as you inspect this program, I urge you, don't give it another sticker. Take it off the road today. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
All right. Thank you for your testimony. Any questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it very much. All right. Brandon Garrett from the Attorney General's office would like to speak. Good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
And I'd remind everyone, if you can keep it to 3 minutes, please do. Less, ideally. Thank you.
Good morning. I will do my best to keep it to 3 minutes.
Appreciate it.
My name is Brandon Garrod. I'm a Senior Assistant Attorney General at the New Hampshire Department of Justice. I'm also the Chief of the Consumer Protection and Antitrust Bureau. And part of the widespread consumer protection tasks that are assigned to the Bureau is the enforcement of New Hampshire's unsafe motor vehicle statute, which is impacted by this bill. So I come to you neither in support nor against the central policy of the bill as to whether we should have annual inspections or not. I think that that is a question best suited for the legislature to take up, not for the Attorney General to weigh in on, but rather to highlight some significant concerns about changes that this bill will make to New Hampshire's sale of unsafe used motor vehicle statutes and some issues that it will present for the Attorney General's office on the other side of this legislation in order to help consumers who find themselves on the wrong side of a sale of an unsafe motor vehicle. So with that in mind, I'll just give you a brief background of why the Attorney General sees problems with the amendment to the unsafe motor vehicle statute. We receive thousands of consumer complaints and consumer inquiries every year. Overwhelmingly, the majority of the complaints that we receive are about used car sales and home contractors. Used car sales, I'd say it's about even, but we every single day receive complaints from New Hampshire citizens who buy used cars only to find out that there are problems that they did not anticipate at the type of the sale. Unsafe motor vehicles are rarely allowed for sale throughout the country. New Hampshire is one of the few states that does allow them, but we have a system in play that holds dealers accountable if they're going to sell a car to a consumer that is unsafe for operation on the roads. They have consumer disclosures that they're required to comply with currently. Specifically, if a consumer is buying a car that the dealer determines is unsafe, the dealer is required to give the consumer a form that specifically informs them that they are about to buy an unsafe motor vehicle and lets the consumer know that if they want, they can elect to pay for an inspection that will list all of the deficiencies that will let them know exactly what they're buying. So the consumer gets to decide on whether they want to pay for the inspection, but it's the dealer's initial responsibility to inform the consumer by providing this form that this is an unsafe vehicle that they're about to buy. This is significant because when we receive complaints from consumers about buying an unsafe motor vehicle, there's an easy way for us to investigate and determine whether the law was complied with. We initially asked the consumer to provide us with all of the documents that they were provided in the sale. If they have an unsafe motor vehicle form that they signed acknowledging that they purchased an unsafe vehicle, then they've been notified, the law's been complied with, and there's no role for us. But if they can't provide one, we reach out to the dealer and ask them for a copy because they're required to retain one for their records. So if neither the consumer or the dealer can produce an unsafe motor vehicle form that was given to that consumer and signed by both the consumer and the dealer, that's a violation of New Hampshire consumer protection laws, and we have the ability to meaningfully help that consumer potentially get a refund for that unsafe vehicle or get it, repaired so that it's safe to operate. The changes that are proposed in this legislation effectively shift the responsibility of knowing when a potential vehicle, used vehicle that's about to be sold is unsafe from the seller to the consumer. Specifically, the requirement now states that before selling to any customer any used motor vehicle, which is believed by the customer to be unsafe for operation upon the highways, the dealer shall, upon the request of the customer, have a conducted safety inspection. So it anticipates that the customer will come into the dealership and be able to identify that they are about to buy an unsafe vehicle. And only then is there any sort of requirement, that being the customer can have it inspected if they want. I would submit that that gives us no meaningful ability to investigate. There's no longer a form, any sort of disclosure that needs to be given to consumers that they're buying an unsafe vehicle. And also, just based on my experience of talking to consumers and working on these complaints, the consumers that are buying these unsafe vehicles are usually low-income folks who are desperate for a vehicle and do not have the means or the know-how to be able to identify when something they are buying is unsafe, especially if you have dealers who are misleading them or presenting a car as being in better condition than it actually is.
Okay,
So
if you could wrap soon, that'd be great. Thank you.
I'll wrap up just in comment to the sponsor, what the sponsor said about changes that can be made. I think there are changes that could be easily made to this that would help. It simply should shift the responsibility back where it currently is from the consumer to the seller of the car to notify consumers that they're buying an unsafe vehicle. And with
Okay.
that, sorry for going over. I'm happy
it's
to
all
take any
right.
questions if there are.
Thank you. Senator Waters, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So having spent yesterday in a car shop getting my rear brakes replaced, I sure wouldn't have known that they needed to be done. So I guess I'm a typical consumer. But I have a question. We heard statement from earlier testimony that our repair shops and auto dealers are scamming the people of New Hampshire. Do you have any evidence from complaints or prosecutions of scams conducted by repair shops or auto dealers?
Scams generally, or scams
On
related to charging for, I remember the prior testimony was about dealerships essentially charging for repairs that weren't necessary. So I do not have specific examples of that I can cite to, but I can cite many specific examples of folks selling cars to consumers that are unsafe and misrepresenting the quality of that car to the consumer so that they think it's safer than it actually is.
Can I follow up?
Yes, of course.
There was reference by that previous testimony also that the state of New Hampshire is scamming the people of the state through this program. Do you have any law cases or suits or evidence that the state of New Hampshire is scamming people?
I do not.
Thank you.
Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Attorney Grant, for bringing your expertise. Quick comment, you don't sound all that neutral on this. You sound gravely concerned that we might pass it. My question is, how many complaints do you get from consumers who feel like they have had an invalid failure or have been told their vehicle is failing inspection for some reason that they don't believe it should have failed? How often does that type of issue come to your office's attention?
We do get a fair number of complaints about that. And just to reiterate, completely neutral on the underlying whether we should have annual inspections or any inspections. That is not an issue that we're here concerned about. It's simply the change in the consumer protection laws that govern the sale of an unsafe motor vehicle that I think could use some tinkering.
What's a fair number?
I can't tell you. There are frequent complaints from folks that go to get a car inspected and they think that it was either passed when it shouldn't have been or that they were charged for something that they shouldn't have been. I can't anticipate what the number is, but there are a fair number of them.
Dozens, hundreds, thousands?
In a year?
Sure. In any given period of time you pick.
In a year, I would estimate 20 to 30. Estimation.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right, thank you. Appreciate it. Maurice Nault, you are next. Good morning.
Morning.
You could state your name and where you live for the record, that'd be great.
Mo Nault, I live in Manchester, and I'm here representing Twisted Cycles, 5 East Point Drive, Hooksett. And we are inspection station number 2337. And we save lives. The safety inspection checks the complete vehicle to make sure it's okay so no one goes out and gets killed on it. You people would be absolutely surprised at how many of our customers, and we do approximately 500 stickers a year. Our customers have no clue that their tires don't pass. They have no clue how to check a brake or that, they only know the bike is wrong when it doesn't run anymore. And we're firm believers that this once a year inspection is a lifesaver. And I have some food for thought. Let's say you get a phone call, and it's going to be the worst phone call of your life, that your spouse or child was just involved in a fatal accident. And it could have been avoided for a $50 safety inspection. People don't know. When's the last time any of you pulled your wheels and checked your brakes or checked your front end or whatever? And I don't have to tell you what it's like driving out there, whether you're on a motorcycle or a car. The dangers are amplified on a motorcycle, I'll give you that. But New Hampshire is growing, so we're getting more and more drivers. And I just can't believe that we want to do away with a yearly safety inspection. That's all I've got to say.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? All right, appreciate your testimony. Tim Winkler from VIP Auto. Good morning.
Thank you. Good morning. I'm Tim Winkler. I live in Falmouth, Maine. And I serve as the president and CEO for VIP Tires and Service. We're a family-owned company out of Maine. I'm here representing the 190 New Hampshire team members who live in New Hampshire and work in our shops. We operate 22 shops across the state, and we have approximately 80 state inspectors. We believe annual safety inspections save lives. A 2020 Carnegie Mellon University research project that studied roadway fatalities over 15 years of data concluded that states with vehicle safety inspections experienced 5.5% fewer roadway fatalities than states without such programs. When reviewing data from the Federal Highway Administration from as recently as 2022, we find that all New England states that have annual state safety inspections are well below the U.S. average for deaths per 100 million miles traveled. We believe annual state inspections are a key factor. The average age of vehicles on the road today is 12.8 years, and that age continues to get older. That average gets longer every year. There are economical ways to ensure that older vehicles are maintained and kept safe for use on the roadways, and annual safety inspections are proven to be the most effective way to ensure that vehicle owners are maintaining their vehicles such that they can be operated safely. With the newest vehicles being sold today, including so many advanced safety systems that automatically detect other vehicles and objects, not to mention efforts by car makers to sell vehicles with full self-driving capabilities, we believe now is not the time to do away with vehicle safety inspections. Arguments can definitely be made to revise the inspections and keep them focused on the systems of the vehicles that are most critical to ensure public safety. A few examples of how critical components saves lives. When tires
I hate
are
to
new.
interrupt, but if you could summarize maybe, since you have written testimony, and then leave that with us.
Sure. The last point I'll make is you've heard the term component failure a lot. Brakes that get worn down will not be reported as a component failure, even though their stopping distance may be 60% longer than a car with brand new brakes. Same goes for tires on wet roads. Tires on wet roads, when they're brand new, will stop 60% quicker than tires that have worn down to 3 or 4 30 seconds, not to mention if we let them go below 2 30 seconds, which is currently the minimum. So I believe that this term component failure that you hear over and over again is too narrow of a scope, and that we need to be thinking about these aspects like the gentleman before me talked about. People are not aware of brakes and tire depth, and I don't think it should be upon the state police to go around looking at people's brakes and tires to make sure the vehicles are safe.
Okay. Thank you. McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing your perspective as a business owner in this business. So my question is this: if we pass this bill and we eliminate inspections in New Hampshire, how will this directly affect your top line revenue for sales of brakes and tires?
I have no idea how that would impact, because I have no idea how many people would defer versus who would go ahead and have those brakes and tires replaced. We sell lots of brakes and tires to people who need them for inspection. We sell lots of brakes and tires to people who don't yet need them or are not in for a sticker. They're just in for an oil change or some other service. So I have no idea how to correlate to answer your question. I would be guessing as to how many people would defer tires or brakes when they're past what would be currently the legal limit. But I know that if people were to defer that, that would be a vehicle whose stopping distance would be, in most professional judgments, unsafe.
All right. All right. Any other questions? Thank you. Appreciate you being here. Is Representative Dry back? Come on up.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I haven't testified over there yet, so I'm going to run real fast after this.
Okay.
Thank you for hearing my testimony. For the record, I am Representative Margaret Dry from Plainfield. I represent Sullivan County District 7, Plainfield, Cornish, Newport, Unity, and Charlestown. And I'm here in opposition to the bill. Before I ran for office, I was on the board of the Hanover Consumer Cooperative for 13 years. Hanover Co-op is the second largest food co-op in the nation, and it runs 2 service centers, one in Vermont and one in New Hampshire. And I know that our public relations person has submitted written testimony for you, but he wanted me to emphasize today the legal liability of the repair shops and the repair mechanics. He gave the example of, for example, lesser scale, less critical scale, the ski shops that refuse to sharpen skis or work on skis if the bindings have been shown to be not safe. And even as a customer only wants the skis sharpened, they would want to refuse that because that would put someone with known bad skis out on the slopes. And he kind of correlated their work there with this. And they will see a lot of things and would like to, won't kind of be powerless to help with that. And what's their liability if they service this person? Second, my local garage tried to submit written testimony and got it bounced back. And so I'm hoping you're not executing on this soon, because I know people that they're trying to get a hold of you. And in my off time, I am an emergency medical technician. And so besides the enforcement people and the mechanics in this room, I probably see the undersides of cars more often than the average person does. And I'm not trying to correlate bad brakes and bad tires with fatalities, but just unsafe on the road. And I think that as an EMT and public safety person, I really would like to see, we like to see and know that the cars that we see upside down that have the bad tires or the bad brakes are going to get caught in inspection and fixed. And that's what we're counting on. So I think it's a step too far to completely do away with inspections. But as you've heard, there are a lot of things that you can address, and I hope you'll do that. And I can entertain a couple questions if you have.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Senator Waters?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Knowing your district, you have a lot of kids that spend a lot of time with school buses up there. This bill would reduce the number of inspections from twice a year to once a year. Do you think that that puts our most vulnerable people at risk in riding school buses that might not be adequately inspected?
Thank you, Senator. I do believe it will. I understand that, school buses in rural areas spend a lot of time on the road, and kids spend a lot of time on the buses. It's more than an average person in a larger town would go back and forth. And I think there's a lot of mileage put on those, and I really, I think parents would rest easier if they knew that that was a regular inspection system.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, Representative. Appreciate it. Jim Bailey from the Towing Association. And friend, come on up. Devin, right?
Yes.
Yeah, gotcha. All right. Good morning, gentlemen.
Good morning. Good morning.
Good morning. Please introduce yourselves and tell us the story.
Certainly. Thank you for having us, by the way. My
Thanks
name is
for being
Jim Bailey. I'm a small business owner in Merrimack, New Hampshire. I'm connected to this state inspection in kind of a different site or different angle. I am not a state inspection station. However, my towing side of my business, I have experience of going out to accidents that were directly related to mechanical failures on automobiles. Some of the examples that I can give you are bald tires. I could speak about that. Our unpredictable New England weather can come down with some pretty horrific rainstorms to cause ponding on the turnpike systems. And some of these accidents that I go to are cars that had bald tires, tried to get across that pond. The car spun out, bounced off the Jersey barrier, hit 3 other cars at the same time. So that to me is a safety issue for sure. Other experiences that I've seen for causing accidents are the steering components on cars where people lose their steering. Case in point, I have some pictures. I don't know if there's any way that I could share these with you this morning, pass them around.
You can give it to the age, sure.
These are going to be some pictures of some cars that have come to my shop. I'll talk about those later. But on the towing side of it, again, these steering components from the factory, they don't have grease fittings in them. So there's a life expectancy to tie rod ends, ball joints, and all are critical to the steering of the person's car. So when that vehicle loses its steering, you can picture the front wheel on a grocery cart going like a caster like this. That's basically all the steering that they have. So that is a big component, in my opinion, if we totally do away with the safety inspections. In that picture that I sent over is a recent job. I went for a customer's car. It was a Toyota, early 2000. His left outer ball joint totally disconnected from the wheel. The wheel started doing this. He was stuck in the middle of traffic. I towed him in. We put a ball joint in it for him. It was a very inexpensive part, to be honest with you. But I think it was just lack of maintenance on the owner's part to keep driving it until it stops driving. I asked him if I could check the opposite side tire on because it has about the same mileage as the one that broke. He said, sure, why not? We jacked it up and the right side was just getting ready to break. So he had me do both. So that's my experience in the towing side of it. Other accidents that I've been to, cars that get T-boned happens a lot in four-way intersections. And if the rust is on the rocker panel, door jamb area, that's the structural part of the car. In the 70s, cars had frames in them. They did away with the frames, changed it to unibody, and then the unibody in New England weather rusts out, and now the structural isn't there, and the intrusion coming in from the side is further than it should be because of the rust on the car.
All right, we're at 3 minutes, so if you could
Okay.
wrap up.
Want to speak?
All right.
I'll come in after.
My name is Devin. I own a repair shop in Dover that does inspections, and I'm a licensed inspector, also representing the Towing Association. I was going to speak with most of the same things as Jim. We've even seen a situation recently, a vehicle came in that was worked on by a family member, and only half of the brakes were put in. And even with the noise, the person just couldn't tell without visually seeing it. There are huge safety problems that can happen. It's a scare.
Okay.
May I, I'm sorry, could I
Yes,
just
please.
inject one more statement, please? In my frustration level here on some of these accidents that I go through with these cars are unsafe, there's car seats in the back seat. And I want to be the voice of the infants and the children that are getting buckled into these unsafe vehicles, that I think that they need to be safety inspected to make sure it's safe for the kids that are riding in these automobiles as well.
Okay.
Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
Thank you.
Senator Rishardi, do you have a question?
Thank you for taking my question. So since you do the towing, is one of your concerns that if there are cars that do need brakes or tires that are bald and you're assisting someone on the side of the road, that you or your colleagues could be injured?
Oh, yes, for sure. It's pretty dangerous out there, just doing our normal day-to-day operations with the traffic as high as it is. And having unsafe cars in the mix of the cars that are this close to us as we're doing our work on the side of the highway, it's an unsettling feeling that there's unsafe cars we're sharing the road with every day.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Mark Brown. All right. Yes, I missed that. My apologies. All right, next is Paul Wolf.
Good morning. Thank you.
Good
for
morning.
Giving me this opportunity.
If you could turn on your microphone, please.
Oh,
There
there
we
we
go.
go. Thank you for giving me this opportunity to speak to, in support of this, bill. A little nervous, 'cause I've never done this before.
Don't be.
But let's go through it.
We're pretty friendly.
It should be a lot less than 3 minutes, or a lot, it should be around 3 minutes.
All right.
I'm going to jump around a little bit with different notes I have here. Last month, the House approved 649, 212 to 143. Also, the union leader had a poll that was out, it still is. It's about 2 to 1 in favor of supporting this bill. And I think that clearly states what the people of New Hampshire are expecting with this bill. I'm a former auto mechanic and a former certified Massachusetts certified DMV inspector. And I have some thoughts with some of that experience behind me. As you've heard, there are 36 states that no longer have auto inspections. Some are on the northern borders with the inclement weather, which also have to do with the perhaps bad tires or whatever. And they don't have inspections. You've heard from the opponents, quote, that inspections save lives. There's just absolutely no data available that correlates that states with inspection save lives. Even the federal data only showed, what little is available shows that only about 2% of their collisions, their data have come from collisions that are vehicle safety related, and none are fatal or with personal injury. Sorry, I gotta put my glasses on. You've heard that people talk about the components, bald tires, bad brakes, rusted frames. They cannot provide you with any data that correlates this to vehicle safety as far as personal injuries and fatalities go. Going to the program, there is a giant conflict of interest in this program. Let's all agree. It's in the best financial interest of the mechanics doing the inspections to find issues, whether they are truly safety related or not. And please understand, I am not painting them all with the same brush. There are certainly many trustworthy, reliable, and honest mechanics out there. Sometimes they're just a little bit difficult to find. If a vehicle is rejected, there is a recourse in place from the state. It wouldn't necessarily get to the, I guess, Department of Justice
office, but many people, it's a time-consuming measure, and it takes a while to do it, multiple appointments. My wife and my sons have all been victims to this process. As you've also heard, so many stories of women and the elderly who have fallen victim to it because they just don't know much about their automobiles. The common cry about defective equipment. I don't want to be on a road with a car that has failing brakes, and I assume that means with another person. Most passenger vehicles manufactured in the last 30 or 40 years, the brakes rarely catastrophically fail, i.e. no brakes, step on the pedal and there's nothing. There are loud warning noises, indicator lights, and lots of other sounds for thousands of miles that alert a vehicle owner to the fact that their brakes need attention. Commercial vehicles, different story. One may ask, what's the incentive for an owner to keep their car safe? Well, they have some states have hefty fines, upwards of maybe $500 for a headlight or tail light out. These fines can be, if the motorist fixes the issue within 72 hours, the fine is waived. New Hampshire RSA 266-4 has that ability to do that. We could have the people patrolling the roads already look for some of those defects. There's a gentleman, a retired state policeman, Brian Chase, who's now the head of an internationally respected forensic accident reconstruction firm. He testified before the House Committee. He has a lengthy document that I did not bring, but it can be made available. I'd be glad to provide it. In summary, there is absolutely no conclusive data to show that New Hampshire State Motor Vehicle Inspection Program has any significant link or connection to motor vehicle safety in New Hampshire. There is not enough value in the program to justify its existence. It has no proven value in reducing automotive safety-related injuries or fatalities. It really is a moneymaker for the people doing the inspections. One last point, and that is a few of those states that still have inspections have either the DMV or the state police do those inspections. There is no conflict of interest. I would certainly welcome if someone wanted to rewrite this bill, however, or amend it so that happens, the conflict of interest goes away and should still satisfy the safety folks. I urge you to support this measure and get rid of this highly unfair and ineffective program that is unnecessarily taking money from New Hampshire motorists, many of whom are on limited or fixed incomes and can least afford it. And I appreciate your time.
All right.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Any questions?
Any questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Mark Robinson, also from VIP Tire and Services here. Good morning.
Good morning. So I'm not only here just as a representative for VIP Tires and Service, I'm also a lifelong New Hampshire resident. And I've been an inspector in an independent shop for 12 years prior. So I've been in the industry for 30-something years. So I pretty much, like most of these guys have been doing it a long time, we've seen it all. And a lot of good points. Consumers don't know, what they're looking at when they need their brakes done. They're not, I guess I'll jump around a little bit. So one of the things that we do in our shops at VIP is vehicle comes in for an inspection, whether it needs something or not, we bring the customer out and show them, in the spirit of transparency. So we just want to make sure that they understand what's going on with the car. It's about educating them. And as far as if it fails inspection, they have the right to have it repaired by anybody else. It doesn't have to be VIP. I do think that the laws need to be looked at. The OBD program needs to be, taken a second look at. Some of the inspection items and the safety part of it should be probably looked at. I think, I've watched window tint, flip-flop 3 times in the past, 15 years. Same thing with rope plugs and tires. We can't make up our mind. And I think we just need to come up with a best practice. And obviously, I agree state inspections are a necessary item in the state. But again, maybe simplifying the process is the answer here.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Senator Waters.
So isn't it the case that the tires are a lot softer now in terms of materials and wear down faster?
In a lot of cases, yes. Doesn't necessarily mean they will wear faster with the technology in tires, because they'll put silica, the compound in soybean oil and things like that, that will soften the tread, but also keep the longevity of the tire as well. You know, that's why they have some of these tires that they rate for 85,000 miles, but they're a soft tire.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Representative Vallone, please. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, and thank you for hearing my brief, very brief testimony.
Sure.
So I'm just here to speak in opposition to this bill. And I'm just looking at New Hampshire's asthma rates. We have some of the highest asthma rates in the country. One way that we can monitor the impact of things like automobile exhaust is by inspections. If this bill gets passed, what is the way to monitor the health of our air for all those people who have asthma problems in New Hampshire? Cost us $177 million in medical expenses. So I'm just going to leave you with that information, and I hope you can put that into your considerations. Thank you.
Any questions? Senator Waters?
Thanks for coming in. Having had an asthma issue with our son, when Southeast New Hampshire was identified as one of the highest asthma rates in the country for children, would you believe that actually the cost to New Hampshire for cardiopulmonary related to air pollution is over $400 million, according to HHS, annually?
Okay, well, I have a different, I'm sorry, I have Dr. Google right as my source, so, but I'm sure you've got better information on that. But I wouldn't be surprised at that.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Representative Harvey Bolio. Good morning to you.
Good morning, members of Ways and Means. Thank you very much for my very brief testimony. My name is Representative Juliet Harvey Bolio, representing Belknap County District 3, and I'm in support of this bill. I'm one of the co-sponsors, but I just wanted to share my very brief anecdote about my 2010 Volvo, which has been in the shop in Belmont since November of last year. It's lived there. And we're going to pick it up. I finally said to the garage manager, please just put a failed inspection sticker on it for now. What had happened was Volvos, as you might know, have a very solid body. And so when the engine went, we said, we don't want to throw this away. It's virtually rust free, even though it's old. So I said, we replaced the engine for many thousand, we're up to about $10,000 in costs right now. Replace the entire engine. We replaced the catalytic converter with a aftermarket, a little bit less expensive part. And when it still failed emissions, the manager said, well, it's probably because it's an aftermarket part. You're going to have to unfortunately do the factory part, which was more expensive. So we replaced that part, and it has still failed, and the manager cannot figure out what it is. So he said, please just keep the car, do the, I don't know, you probably have heard already when you fail emissions and you've replaced everything, you have to do this series of maneuvers where you drive a car a certain way for a certain number of miles, you stop, and you kind of stop and go, and you drive it at different speeds. So we allowed him to keep the car and do what he needed to do to pass it. But it has been since November, and he still is unable to pass it, and the car doesn't have any lights on. So it is not passable, but nothing is wrong with it. So in the out of respect for the environment and recycling of vehicles, and out of respect for our wallets, I ask that you please pass this, and I don't think I'll be taking any questions. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, Representative. Appreciate your testimony. David Siegel from Napa. Thank you for coming in.
And good morning,
Chairman and members of the committee. Thank you. I'll keep my comments quick as passing around my testimony. I'm David Siegel. I live in Bow, New Hampshire, lifelong resident of New Hampshire. My family owns Sandal Napa. We're a 105-year-old company with 500 team members and 47 locations. So our comments today are just to urge the committee to oppose H649. It's about safety. We have a large customer base of over 4,000 accounts. Many of them are here today. I've spent a considerable amount of time meeting with professional service dealers, understanding their challenges, their opportunities, and also fleet owners. On HB 649, including yesterday in Newport, where I visited 20 service dealer customers, I've yet to meet a supporter of this bill. Thirdly, Sandal Napa is also a large fleet owner with over 200 vehicles. We drive an estimate anywhere from 25 to 30,000 miles per year. Our brakes, our steerings, our tires wear out. Just parts wear out. While we perform for our vehicles daily vehicle safety checks, we do schedule annual inspections by professional technicians to ensure our vehicles are safe on New Hampshire roads. And we rely on professionals to do the job. The size of our fleet, safety is our #1 focus for our team members. So I urge the committee to vote no on HB 649, focusing on safety. Thank you.
Thank you. Question, Senator Murphy.
Thank you. If we repeal car inspections, would you continue to have your fleet inspected?
I'm sorry, can you just say it one more
If you
time?
repeal car inspections, would you continue to have your fleet inspected?
We would, in terms of safety. How we would do it, I don't know, depending on what the new opportunities are. But having regulations, having that we can follow in terms of strict safety variations, we'd have to do something.
Follow up, Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course.
Your letter, there's one sentence here. Cars, trucks, and SUVs are better built and last longer. If that's true, might it make sense to exempt cars of a certain age from inspections?
Well, again, for our vehicles, we buy new vehicles with our delivery vehicles. We wear out brakes in a year. We wear out tires in a year. And again, so it doesn't matter whether it's a new vehicle or an older vehicle, it's the amount of use and the amount of driving a vehicle has. And for some of them, if we didn't have inspections, we would fail safety-wise for our vehicle. So again, from our perspective, the year of the vehicle, it wouldn't matter.
Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for bringing your expertise and your business perspective on this. One sentence says inspections are not a moneymaker. Why? My question is this: why do so many places continue to do it and continue to use that? One person testified that it's an educational opportunity. Isn't it also a selling opportunity?
So
an annual selling opportunity?
Yeah, I'll let most of the folks who are in the service business speak more to that. From what I'm told, not based on their expertise, is that it opens up opportunities to show where there's safety issues, and then we'll let the consumer decide what they want to do, whether they want to have a. In my particular case, my personal vehicles. My wife actually drives a Volvo, and we've had opportunities whether to get brakes done now where they're close to failing, or wait to the next time where they do need attention immediately. So it's a personal decision, but they, from what I'm told, the actual idea on inspection that they don't make money off it. It ties up a bay, but the opportunity is about safety, and that's what I'm hearing from our customers, is that there's a concern about the opportunity of having unsafe vehicles on there. And, I've heard a lot of opposition in terms of safety numbers. Well, by having the safety and having these safety inspections, we are preventing accidents. And we are having safer vehicles over there that are being inspected.
Any other questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. We have a couple of members of the New Hampshire State Police here, Matt Antucci and Tom Conlon. I don't know if you want to come up together or separate. You're welcome to come together if you'd like to.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, committee members. My name is Matt Amatucci, and I'm here in opposition of this bill
Close to your name.
on behalf of the New Hampshire State Police. This bill would have a great impact on the Division of State Police and all of New Hampshire law enforcement. House Bill 649 seeks to shift the responsibility in identifying unsafe vehicles entirely onto law enforcement, placing an undue burden on troopers who are already stretched thin, expecting them to spot mechanical issues during routine patrols without the tools, time, or training of a licensed inspector. While inspections are not a catch-all solution, they serve as a proactive safeguard that complements the role of law enforcement in maintaining roadway safety. It ensures that vehicle safety isn't left solely to the chance encounter with police, but instead addresses systematically and consistently. This bill would require additional training for all of New Hampshire law enforcement. The New Hampshire Police Academy would have to develop a training program for all law enforcement. Every law enforcement agency would have to incorporate this training into the field training programs. An in-service training program would need to be created for our approximately 3,500 sworn law enforcement officers. House Bill 649 would increase the responsibility for our troopers and law enforcement who are already stretched thin and being asked to do more with less resources. Currently, the state police has 56 vacancies, which is over 15% of our force. State police has primary patrol responsibilities now in 68 towns and unincorporated areas, and secondary patrol responsibilities in another 75 towns and unincorporated areas due to the vacancies across the state with local agencies. Relying solely on law enforcement to catch unsafe vehicles means that the danger has already reached the road. By the time that the problem is visible, it has already put drivers, passengers, and others at risk. It is critical for the committee to recognize the unintended consequences embedded in House Bill 649. The bill does not only repeal the safety inspection program, but also significantly weakens, in some cases entirely removes the laws that currently allow law enforcement to address the vehicles that pose safety risks. This will relieve a dangerous gap in both oversight and enforcement. Other states that have chosen to eliminate vehicle safety inspection programs have taken the necessary steps to ensure that laws were in place for maintaining roadway safety. These laws serve as a critical safety net in the absence of formal inspections, helping to ensure that unsafe vehicles can still be identified and removed from our roadways. In 2024, the New Hampshire State Police had over 170,000 calls for service and conducted over 99,000 motor vehicle stops. The New Hampshire Safe State Inspection Program has long fostered the mindset where safe, well-maintained vehicles are the norm rather than the exception. When vehicles are regularly inspected and held to a safety standard, it helps to take some of the enforcement responsibilities off of our shoulders. That means fewer stops for the equipment violations or broke down vehicles, leaving more time to focus on serious threats and emergency calls. Laws are designed to protect the general safety, and removing the requirement for physical safety inspections does the opposite of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Conley?
Thank you. While some vehicle equipment standards are set forth in statute, it's administrative rules that provide the detailed framework for vehicle safety standards in the state. These documents work in concert with one another, providing reference between the two. As this comes to the bill, the main focus are the 3200 rules, the state motor vehicle inspection rules. However, that's not the only ones that are affected. I want to draw our attention to one specific set, which are the 1300 rules, deals with school bus transportation. The purpose of which, as defined, is to reduce the danger of death or injury to students while they're being transported to and from school and school-related activities. These rules provide a consistent approach to student safety, a population group whose family and loved ones entrust us to protect. One of those rules specifically references the state inspection requirement. All buses over 10,000 pounds need to be inspected semi-annually. All buses under 10,000 pounds need to be inspected annually. But that is not the only. In RSA, there's also a separate statute that's not affected by this bill, but it's the inspection of school buses. That school bus inspection is school bus specific It's a visual inspection of mechanical components, and it's a lot of other components within the bus, be it the emergency exits, first aid kit, etc. All the measurables when it comes to tread depth, brake measurements, that is all set forth in the inspection. Currently, we rely on official state inspection stations and certified inspection mechanics to conduct all these inspections, both the state safety and the school bus. We currently have 3,500 school buses on our roads today. Even with the repeal of this, the school bus safety inspection still exists, and that would fall upon Troop G. Back when we Highway Patrol merged with the state police around 2008 is when the inspection stations took care of all the school buses. Prior to that, we had 85 troopers dedicated to the commercial vehicle side of the house, and they were tasked with these school bus inspections. Currently, our staffing is at 30, and I have 23 troopers trained to the federal standards that would be able to conduct these inspections. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Senator Waters has a question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the fiscal impact of this bill, I mean, we don't have programs just to raise money from folks, but the fact of the matter is that we're looking at a $3.5 million decline in revenues, 2.9 million of which goes to the highway fund, from which the state police receives some funding. So this bill will decrease the funding that you receive from the highway fund?
It could, sir.
Yeah, I may follow up.
Yes.
So that said, and what we've heard about reassignment of officers and so on, wouldn't you also have to put in your capital budget a request for some very expensive equipment and perhaps vehicles in which it would be held? Because this bill repeals your ability to give somebody 72 hours to get something fixed so that they can't leave the roadside. And you'd have to inspect it there and get the equipment there, or get it towed to a place where you had the equipment. Isn't that the case?
Yes, sir. As it stands now, the law allows us to, if we determine that a vehicle appears to be unsafe, there's a tire smoking, we can have that vehicle towed to an inspection station by a professional certified technician to inspect that vehicle and determine, is that vehicle safe for the roadway? Repealing this would remove that ability for us. So a trooper or an officer would have to determine, if they don't feel that that vehicle is safe, they could tow it from the roadway, but there's nothing that prevents that person from then getting their vehicle and driving it again. There's no mechanism, the way this law is being repealed, to allow us to give it a fix-it ticket, for example, what a lot of states have done, where you have 72 hours to get whatever issues are causing your safety problems, to get that fixed.
I may ask one more. So the other area that I think is part equipment and also part statutory has to do with motorcycles. So 265(1)B, which we passed a little while ago, prohibits you from making having motorcycle checkpoints, right? So if somebody has a noise violation, you'd have to chase them and pull them over. But then at that point, wouldn't it be that every cruiser would have to be equipped with the noise meter? Or, I mean, what would you do in that case? Because you'd have to, you now are having to do the noise inspection for motorcycles.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the question. There would be no real mechanism for us to enforce that. Those tests are done not on the side of the road. There's several things that need to be done, including equipment, to determine where that level is. We would not be able to enforce noise on motorcycles.
And just one more. Thanks.
All right,
Because they're only police up here, right? So I got it. So, I mean, first, thank you for your service. We heard earlier that New Hampshire is one of the safest states in terms of accidents. Fatalities are going up, I know that. But it's been averred that inspection programs have nothing to do with the low accident rate and fatality rates on our roads. Would you agree with that?
I would not agree with that. You say 2 to 7%. we're talking tens of thousands.
Yeah.
Tens of thousands across this country at 2 to 7%. And I would just say that this is going to increase the responsibility that you're and the burden that you're putting on all of your law enforcement. There are several bills that are in right now helping us to combat driving behavior and other things that are going on across the state. And this would be counterproductive to what we're trying to do. We would now be trying to combat people driving over 100 miles an hour now in potentially unsafe vehicles that poses a great risk to everybody that's on our roadways.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Senator, we're going to start at the end. Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, troopers, for coming and bringing the law enforcement expertise. So my question is this: if the bill passes, would this allow you to focus on other violations, or exactly the opposite? Would it force you to focus on finding those unsafe vehicles as opposed to just glancing at the sticker? So, do you understand what I'm asking? Would you have to focus more on finding unsafe vehicles, or would it allow you to focus on other more serious violations?
Thank you for the question. Last year, we had over 5,800 disabled vehicles that we responded to, calls for service. We had another over 900 unabandoned vehicles. And this is just state police. So we're talking well over 6,000 calls for service of either disabled or unattended vehicles on our highways. That number will only increase if we get rid of safety inspections. So therefore, it would increase our time on the side of the roads dealing with those types of calls. And I don't know what the responsibility is going to be on our law enforcement as far as safety checks are concerned. What is that? And that's not explained. If we repeal this, where does that responsibility fall? Does that fall on your law enforcement to ensure that every vehicle that we stop is safe? The expectation is with a valid inspection sticker that vehicle is safe.
Quick follow-up.
Quickly, please.
Thank you. Real quick. Do you already have the ability or responsibility to ensure the vehicle is safe if you put it back on the road after a stop?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thanks.
Senator Murphy.
People from 39 states that don't have car inspections, they come to New Hampshire, they drive around our roads. Do you believe that these people are driving death traps, that they need to be stopped and have their car inspected because no one's looked at it in some number of years? Or you have 5,800 abandoned cars by the side of the road. You find those are more likely to be from those 39 states.
Thank you for the question. That I'm not sure, sir, as far as what states they're from. I don't have that information.
Senator Richard.
Good morning. Thank you for your service and taking my question. So currently, law enforcement has the discretion to allow a driver 72 hours to make any necessary repairs without facing penalties, provided that they show that the repairs to make the car safe were done. If 649 were to pass and remove that flexibility, so if this discretion is eliminated, what options will exist for officers to work cooperatively with vehicle owners moving forward?
Thank you for the question. It would eliminate the ability for us to work with motorists. The officer would have to determine if they feel, in their opinion, with the experience that they have, if that vehicle is safe. And they would either have to tow the vehicle or allow the vehicle to go, but there's no assurances that they would get that vehicle fixed.
All right. Any other questions? All right. Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Let's see. Department of Environmental Services I saw on here. Mr. Scott, Mr. Fitzgerald, please. Yes. I'd like to remind everyone, keep it as short as you can. If you have written testimony, please don't read it. Submit it to the aides. They'll get us copies. And if you could summarize, that would be great. All right.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Again, my name is Bob Scott. I'm Commissioner with the Department of Environmental Services. I have with me our Assistant Director for the Air Resources Division, Mike Fitzgerald. A quick points I wanted to mention. Again, I'll be talking about the emissions program part of this, not the safety inspections per se. I do speak in opposition of this bill as written. And mainly it's regarding, that portion is regarding the Clean Air Act requirements. As you likely may know, the Clean Air Act requires this type of program. There can be some flexibility, which is how we get to the existing program. But in order to change the requirements for our program in New Hampshire, there's a process in the Clean Air Act where we would have to work with the Environmental Protection Agency. And also significant to this is within the Clean Air Act, there are civil suit provisions. So even if which I do think we have a more probably friendly EPA for this type of thing in working with us at the moment, if not done properly, under the Clean Air Act, there's a requirement which would put our highway funds at risk. So what I do ask, if you were to follow this process, that you insert language that will allow us to follow the Federal Clean Air Act process to get us to this point, if that's what you elect to do. Also, I want to point out in the context of what we would need to do is under the Clean Air Act again, there's anti-backsliding provisions. So what that would mean is any emissions reductions that we currently derive from the existing program for vehicles would have to be offset by other programs. In this case, most likely it would be on our stationary sources, our businesses in New Hampshire, which I would argue already are doing their fair share for air pollution, if you will. So given the time, I won't necessarily ask him to speak, but again, if you have questions on how we'd implement that or the whys and wherefores or how we got to where we are, I have Mr. Fitzgerald here with me to help answer questions.
Okay. Any questions, Senator McHugh?
Thank you, Commissioner, for coming to testify. Has any state, to your knowledge, lost federal funding when they've repealed similar inspection laws?
I'm not aware of that, but I'm not aware of any state not following the federal requirements, if you will.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Senator Waters?
I would just clarify that under the Clean Air Act, EPA has 18 months to allow states to rectify the situation. They call it a sanctions clock. They have started the sanctions clock on states, including New Hampshire. They started the sanctions clock on us in 1998, and that resulted in the compromise that we now have. So the withholding of highway funds would probably be a multi-year process, and the state would just have to say, absolutely no, we're not doing this.
All right. Senator Waters.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thanks. So, in the fiscal note, it's a $262,000 hit to the Air Pollution Abatement Fund. And I would assume you have no ability to replace that funding. So what would the consequences be for public health and other matters that are funded by that money?
We do have some staff that obviously are working related to this program. Mobile Sources is one of the largest, if not the largest sector of our remaining air pollution that's in the state. We've done a good job. Stationary Sources, smokestacks in the state have done a good job of reducing and limiting that. So again, we'd have to offset that in the context. But there's other ancillary programs, and Mr. Fitzgerald could probably state it better, but there are the related programs that are being, that staff are supporting that are funded by this program. Mike?
I would just say that the transportation sector, as the Commissioner indicated, is the largest sector of emissions, but it's also the most difficult to control. It's generally private cars, vehicles, trucks, and so on. So the inspection program is one of the few things that we have to control that. But we do have programs like Volkswagen funding, Diesel Emission Reduction Act funding, et cetera, that allow us to give out grants to cities and municipalities to replace older vehicles, trucks with that are higher emitting and so on. So some of those positions are partially supported by the Motor Vehicle Abatement Fund. And that's their home account for those, even though they might work on some other tasks as well.
Just one more, thanks. So, it may be up in the air what EPA does about pollution going forward. But, isn't it fair to say that, even if they don't enforce that, we will be subject to civil lawsuits by folks who, under a lot of federal statute, could sue us for not, complying with, air quality?
Thank you for that. Yes, I think we would certainly be able to work very well with EPA, but should we or EPA not do what we're required to do, again, under the civil suit provisions, it's a invitation for others to sue, and I find it hard to believe that we would not end up in court and lose if we don't follow the process, unless the law changes.
So I may just add, that's what, my first term in the legislature, that threat is what got us to spend $400 million in a scrubber at Merrimack, didn't it?
Correct.
Senator Murphy.
Thank you. Just doing some checking. It looks like 16 states don't require emissions testing at all. And a lot of the ones that do either exempt cars within the last 5 years, or they do it every 2 or 3 years instead. How did we get every year? Why? Honestly, I think we got a raw deal. And my question is, how do we have one of the most burdensome testing requirements in the country?
So as I mentioned, back in 1998, EPA started the sanctions clock on us. That began negotiations. Then Representative Jeb Bradley led those negotiations for the state with the EPA and the Department of Safety, Commissioner Flynn at the time, and our commissioner. And we developed the statewide program that we currently have as a compromise to the requirements of the EPA at the time, which was very onerous tailpipe testing program, which is expensive, time-consuming, and very, very difficult to accomplish. And so that compromise was what EPA was ultimately able to approve. Relative to your question, yes, several states do have 1 or 2 year exemptions. That is something that we probably could work out with EPA. As the commissioner mentioned, the anti-backsliding provisions, if whatever emissions reductions we lose from this program, and if we make changes to it, we would have to make those up in another sector. But that's a negotiation. It would probably take us 12 to 18 months to provide the information, do the modeling, get an EPA on board. Again, as the commissioner mentioned, the EPA has very limited discretion in this area. It's not a rule, it's a statute. It's the Clean Air Act that requires this specifically. So even though they might have a predilection towards, currently being a little less enforcement of this, it is a federal statutory requirement. But 1 or 2 years is something that could be negotiated. And as the commissioner mentioned, that's what we'd be asking for if we were to move forward with this, would be the effective date be upon the time that EPA approves what's known as a state implementation plan revision for the state, which is what makes this program federally enforceable.
Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for indulging, but since we have you here and you're the experts in this, have there been any successful lawsuits in regard to these EPA emission requirements? I mean, since Congress limited NHTSA's ability to enforce, you mentioned the lack of enforcement since, 40, 50 years or so.
Again, as the commissioner mentioned, I think in most cases, the states and EPA have been able to resolve their differences. Senator Murphy mentioned looking at a map without the requirements. You will note that all of the states from Delaware to Maine do have emissions inspection programs as a result of being in what's known as the ozone transport region. Very technical issue, but that's the Clean Air Act requirement. But I think basically EPA, I know in Atlanta, they did start the sanctions clock and they may have actually withheld funding. But I don't think, I think generally the EPA has been able to work this out and citizen suits aren't necessary. But in this case, I think the concern is that the current EPA might not enforce and therefore citizen suits would be applicable.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you, gentlemen. Appreciate you being here. Representative Henry, is it Gatson III is here. I think, signed up to speak. Ah, there he is. Good morning.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I want to touch on a few things with regards to this bill. The first one is that most of your testimony today in opposition to the bill has a financial vested interest in that they are being driven business by the ability of this law. Now, we heard from law enforcement, and I would tell you that there is no change to the role of law enforcement. They'll still have the ability to pull somebody over. They'll still have the ability to cite unsafe equipment. They still have law enforcement discretion. We are a tourist state, and many of our vehicles come from out of state, and they have the same discretion that they have within state. They can do the fix-it, they can do a cite, they can do an immediate tow. One of the most important things that I'm going to testify to right now is our emissions or lack thereof. New Hampshire has never done emissions. We do an OBD scan, onboard diagnostic system. So if you're not a mechanic, you may not understand this. I'll try to be fair with this. This is an electronic onboard system that tests its own electronic diagnostics. Now, the electronic diagnostics also do sniff exhaust fumes, but if you have any bad electronics anywhere on that system, that check engine light is going on. The check engine light does not mean that what's coming out of your tailpipes is fouled. The check engine light means that something electronically has failed. Now, that could be a sniffer sensor, an O2 sensor. It could be anything to do with the emissions. It could be a crank control sensor that tells the engine that it's out of position. But the fact that that engine light is on does not mean that what's coming out of your tailpipe is fouled. So we're selling the people with this law by saying if your check engine light is off, that your emissions are safe. That's a farce. It's simply not true. You can spend $5,000 chasing a check engine light for a wire that a squirrel chewed, and it doesn't mean what's coming out of your tailpipe is out of compliance with the Clean Air Act, which, by the way, is also applied differently to this state than it is to most of the rest of the United States because where we are on the jet stream. And then the final thing that I'll leave you with is legislatively, we have no control over this entire program. It was passed with its own rules writing procedure. And in 2018, the legislative body passed that surface rust was not going to be a reason to deny inspections. And about 6 months later, it was written back in because we have no control over this as a legislative body. So as a legislative body, we have a responsibility to, first of all, throw the entire program away until we figure out if it's necessary. And then if it is necessary, rewrite the program where we are in control of the rules and where a 10-point safety inspection doesn't become a 3-inch binder of fine print. Right now, on the back of a Dodge Charger, very popular car, the LED that says Dodge on the back of it is a $1,200 part, and it's an accessory part. But that fails a safety inspection in the state of New Hampshire. It's neither a turn signal nor a brake light, but it fails safety inspection. Like, that's unnecessary, and it's because we as a legislative body are no longer in control of this law, sir.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any questions? Seeing none, appreciate you being here. All right. We have two folks from Grapponi, Aaron Cantara and Amanda Grapponi-Osmer. Are they both here? I don't know if you want to come together or separate, but since you're from the same outfit, it made sense. Welcome back.
Thank you very much. In the interest of time, we'll appear together. I'll be very brief because all of my points have been made. My name is Amanda Grapponi-Osmer, live in Sanbornton, New Hampshire, and I'm the owner of Grapponi Automotive in Bow and Concord, New Hampshire. We have 5 inspection stations, and last year we performed 26,919 state inspections. That's why I feel like my team has the expertise to be able to advise me when I ask them, what do you think of the state inspection? I don't do it every day, so I ask my techs. Aaron here is a tech at our Ford store, and I'll let him speak for himself, but I would say that the general consensus amongst our technicians is that there are some items that we very much should keep for safety-related reasons, brakes, tires, steering, and suspension components, major rust. We've talked about all that today. But there are some things that make it an onerous process and which we feel are, to quote one of my texts, nonsense. Certain things like a cracked taillight, the taillight still functions properly, but it's got a slight crack in it. Delaminated license plates, window tint, things like that. So I am speaking in opposition to this bill, and I also would suggest that if we could take a look, whether it's through a committee or study, at how do we modify the bill so that it allows us to remain safe without having this onerous law in place. That's my recommendation.
Thank you.
Hi, members of the committee. My name is Aaron Cantara. I'm a technician of 16 years. I'm ASC certified and I have my inspection license. I come to you as a technician that when we are told that these things are a scam, it is, fairly insulting to the industry because what we're trying to do is to tell the people that their vehicle is either out of safety or within safety. That if you do drive on these things with low brake pads or low tire wear, like we've heard numerous times throughout this, that there's an increased chance of injury or issue. And to say that there is no aligning evidence of that, I was in a motorcycle accident because there was an uninspected, uninsured vehicle that rear-ended me and caused me injury. And if we drop the safety inspections completely, there's no denying that there will be more and more injuries to motorcyclists, pedestrians, anybody walking throughout our state, that these things could increase the likelihood of just more incidents, more accidents, more death within our state. And I wish that you would reconsider and not approve this bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Senator Waters.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. Amanda, good to see you.
Hello.
There's a part of this bill that says, before selling to any customer any used motor vehicle, which is, and this is what's added, believed by the customer to be unsafe for operation upon the highways pursuant to RSA 66, the dealer shall, upon the request of the customer, conduct safety inspection of such vehicle. You sell a lot of cars.
Mhm.
Do you think that the usual person that comes in would have any capacity of knowing whether or not a vehicle is unsafe?
No, in my experience, and I would welcome Aaron to chime in here, most typical drivers don't understand how their cars work, or even if it's, if it's something obvious, then they're going to say, why is there no front bumper? Can you give me a story? What's the Carfax? But underneath and the other working components, I think it's pretty critical that and that's a really good point on the used cars. There are plenty of people in the world who will push a bad car off on a person who's unsuspecting. And at least now we have some sort of protections for those folks who, like we had talked about earlier, have to sign a piece of paper saying, I realize this is an unsafe vehicle because it's been inspected and it didn't pass. So if we take that away, I think that's a big risk as well.
So this is, you mentioned that you have your license
Yes,
certification.
and I'm
to
a
do this
licensed
inspection. So
inspector.
this bill is going to require state police now to do that. How long, and I mean, what did you have to go through to get that certification? Now our state police would have to do.
For that inspection certification, I had to go to a class at the DMV, go through a day class for that, and then there was a field test where they would come out and see us inspect the vehicle, show that we know how to operate the tools available to inspect the vehicle, and show that we can repeatably see that that vehicle is within or without or out of compliance for the state inspection purposes.
And this was on top of the education and training you had to become
Yes.
a mechanic, right?
Yes, on top of that.
Thank you.
Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you very much for bringing, again, some of the business expertise and the highly technical expertise, too. I'm really interested to know how often you find a true life safety threat, something that's likely to send the vehicle off the road, endanger the life safety of the occupant or others on the road. Is that of the 26,919 inspections, or just a percentage? Is that once a week, every day?
I would say that at least 2 to 3 times a week, I see a vehicle that comes in that could be a sway bar link that's broken off that somebody didn't notice because their vehicle wasn't performing in corners properly, or that there was brakes that were like 1/32, barely away from touching metal to metal contact. That, on the outside of the vehicle, you look at it, it looks normal, but on the inside of the vehicle, that inside pad, it may be worn, it may be rusted, the brake rotor may have issues and pins rusted in place. There's so many nuances in these vehicles. They're much cleaner nowadays as well. They are not running like they were in '98, where they're putting out as much emissions. We have a lot of zero and low emission vehicles out there, where I feel like the emissions portion, we could come back and have a conversation about that. But with the safety portion, I feel like it's really needed in place.
Thanks for that. That helps clarify, and I appreciate your perspective on what you qualified as, the nuisance or odorants or nonsense piece or whatever. That does warrant some further discussion. Aside from that part, let's talk a little bit about the financial impact, both to the business and the consumer. So 26,919 inspections over 5 stations. Considering some of those are probably complementary new vehicles, still rolls into the mix. It's over $1 million to the top line if it's $45 a piece or thereabouts.
Yeah,
Is that safe to say?
I don't have the number. I do have the percentage of our overall repair orders. That's 35% of the repair orders open every year. And we do, to your point, we do give away free state inspections if people buy from us, which most folks have. So the other thing too is if it fails, you have 30 days to come back and our techs will re-inspect it free of charge to the guest. And if they're getting the work done. So we as a shop still have to absorb that expense to pay the technician to do the work. And we're not passing that on to the consumer.
So I guess the question is, what's the impact to the top line revenue if we pass this bill and the state inspections go away
Yeah,
entirely?
somebody said this earlier, and I have no idea how many people would still continue to get an inspection. I would make my kids, my teenagers, I would say it's time for your annual inspection. But I have no idea how many people would just stop getting them. So it's hard to answer that question.
Thank you.
All right. Any other questions? Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
The sheriff is here. Sheriff Chuck. Sorry I missed you. Yeah, I got a lot of lists here today. Pretty long. Good morning, sir.
Good morning. Well, thank you for letting me speak today about the inspection program. I wear 2 hats. I'm the High Sheriff of Rockingham County, but I also own a small automotive repair in Londonderry, New Hampshire. I mean, our family's been in the auto repair business since 1958. We still have our original location in Salem, New Hampshire, and I have my location in Londonderry. I did write a speech, but I'm not even going to read it. And the reason why I'm not going to read it is I've listened to enough testimony here today about inspection stickers. Inspection stickers save lives. I don't care what other people say. I think the consensus with inspections today, and I'll give you a perfect example. I had a customer of mine buy a truck and brought it in for inspection. Frame was rotted, tires were bald, truck shouldn't be on the road. It should be in a junkyard. He paid all the money on it. Without an inspection program, he'd be driving that truck right now. And what type of danger is he going to do to the highways and the roads? I don't think it's fair for the state police or even my agency to be doing side road inspections on vehicles. It's a dangerous situation for all of us. Our people aren't trained to do it. You can't have an average state trooper or a sheriff or a local police officer stop a car and say, okay, well, we're going to inspect your vehicle. I mean, I've been doing this for over 40 years. I think the biggest consensus when it comes to inspections, people aren't happy in the state with inspections. They're not happy because they're paying for an emissions test. They're not happy because they have to take the tint off their windows. Do we have a good safety inspection program? Absolutely. I think we have the best safety program in the country. And safety is the #1 priority. But when you tell someone that they can't get an inspection sticker because their emissions test failed because they have a transmission code and their car's fine, or they have a little skip in their engine because their timing chain stretched a little bit and the car runs fine, that's the problem. As far as inspection, as far as the inspectors that are inspecting the cars, hey, listen, you know, you have good people, you have bad people in every type of business. The majority of the people that inspect vehicles are certified, they're educated, they're trained, and, you know, I mean, to say that we're scamming people isn't true. So my suggestion too is, I do oppose this bill. I think we need to get a committee together to study it, and I'd be more than happy to sit on it. I think we need to look to get rid of emissions testing. And I know it'll be a cost to the state, but what's the cost to the taxpayer? And that's it. And I appreciate your time, and I'll take any questions.
Any questions? All right, thank you, Sheriff.
Thank you.
Being here. Tracy Beauregard, New Hampshire Motorcyclist Rights.
Have written testimony. It is corrected. My name is Tracy Beauregard. I'm the president of New Hampshire Motorcycle Rights Organization. I chair the New Hampshire Motorcycle Safety Task Force. I sit on the New Hampshire Traffic and Safety Commission representing motorcyclists. And I'm also on the National Voice of Motorcyclists, which is the Motorcycle Riders Foundation. I will make mine somewhat brief, being that I'm one of the few motorcyclist people that spoke today. Some of the topic of what was going on today, I found it talks about personal responsibility. I would like to remind y'all and everybody in the audience, if you look around at the egregious aggressiveness that we're seeing on the roads, the unbelievable excessive speeds, the decisions that people are making impairment-wise and distraction-wise, do we really think that if we do away with inspections, people are going to be personally responsible and do the right thing with their vehicles? I think there are a lot of people that will. I think there are a lot that will not. The tires on a motorcycle are crucial. You heard from Twisted Cycles. He was not the mechanic. Mo is just one of the ones that work there. I actually go to Twisted Cycles and Hooksett. They are phenomenal. The amount of bald tires that they see come through early spring. And as most of you know, if you don't ride a motorcycle, our season's very short here. Although some people do ride in the winter, most motorcyclists do not. A back tire can wear based on how you ride, the amount of weight that you put on a motorcycle, where you're riding. So it makes a big difference. And for us, two wheels, you can believe that having an inspection and making sure our tires and our brakes are okay is crucially important to us. We also feel that the tires and the brakes on the vehicles that ride around us are crucially important. One of the things I wanted to say was, Senator Waters, thank you for bringing up J2825. We helped create that, which is the noise ordinance for motorcyclists in the state, and fought to get that passed so that motorcyclists would be respectful to the state of New Hampshire with how loud our exhausts are. That stays in law, even if we do away with inspections. So how exactly are we going to enforce that law on motorcyclists? And again, will all motorcyclists comply with that? Absolutely not. I'd like to believe everybody's great, but they're not. So that's unfortunate for us as motorcyclists, because we will be back fighting noise issues. Y'all will be back complaining about our noise issues if we don't have a way to have J2825 inspected when we get our motorcycles inspected. Most motorcyclists used to in the old day know how to work on their motorcycles. Most today do not. The young riders coming in here have no clue about their tire tread. They get on the bike and they ride. This is a dangerous thing for us, and this is, again, why we believe in the inspections. I've heard a complaint about it being expensive. It's a privilege to ride or drive in our state. It's a privilege. It's not a right, it's a privilege. We should all be able to afford or set aside or do what we need to do that's best for our lives and each other's to keep each other safe. And I think that's something that we need to think about as well. And I will take any questions that you have.
Any questions? All right. Thank you. Appreciate your testimony.
Thank you.
Dan Weed from Weed Family Auto. And before you start, we still have a large number of speakers signed up. It's impossible that we'll get through them, even if we were to hang around another hour. So we're going to have to continue to next week, I think, unfortunately, but please.
Well, thank you for having me. Thank you for hearing me, and I appreciate your time today. I'll keep this short and brief. Let's talk about some numbers real quick. 1.5 million plus inspections left in the year 2023. And you heard the Attorney General say that less than 200 complaints out of 1.5 million. One of our previous testimonies was that the check engine light was on due to a Jeep with a clutch issue with an automatic transmission. Obviously, there's a misunderstanding there because that automatic transmission does have what they call a torque converter clutch. And we also have to understand that when the check engine light is turned on, it means that that vehicle is polluting 1.5 times the EPA regulation. So let me clear that up. So out of 1.5 million inspections, we charge an average of, say, $45. The state has a business tax on the businesses doing these inspections of 7.5%. So how are you going to make up an $18 million loss out of business taxes? All right. Out of that, we've heard the testimony that the EPA may withhold funds of another $10 million plus. I think, given the current administration federally, they'd love to wake up tomorrow morning and say, hey, we just saved another $10 million. Cancellation of the contract to the current inspection provider. I don't think they're going to just walk away happily from a multi-million-dollar contract. So how much are we truly saving our state constituents? Right here in the last 3 minutes, you've heard over $20 million of loss of revenue to the state. How are you going to make that up?
Thank you. Any questions?
Let's talk about some job loss too.
Sorry.
Sorry. At the state level, you have the inspection desk, you have the AEI team. Look at the local business level, 2,000 plus inspection stations. And you can't expect that by eliminating this program that there's not going to be job elimination. Eliminate the jobs, you increase the unemployment claims. So really, what are we saving by eliminating this? All of our New England states and counterparts believe that there's an annual inspection program is a benefit. Why wouldn't we continue to hold our constituents, our residents accountable for the health and safety and well-being of their family and friends?
All right. Thank you. Any questions? All right. Appreciate
your time. Thank you.
John Marasco from New Hampshire Department of Motor Vehicles. I'm sorry, sir. I should have gotten you up a little faster.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for waiting.
Thank you. No, thanks for having me here this morning. Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, John Marasco, Director of the Division of Motor Vehicles, the DMV. I do have written testimony here that I can hand out now. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. I'll be brief, Mr. Chair. I've listened to the testimony here this morning. I'll give you just a synopsis of what's in the written testimony. I'm here to represent the New Hampshire Department of Safety, the Commissioner's Office, and the DMV, and we oppose this bill for several reasons, one of which is the safety, and that's really at the very top. I was asked during my testimony before House Transportation by Representative Hill if I was testifying on emissions or if my focus was more on public safety. My focus was 100% on public safety. In 2024, over 1.2 million vehicles in the state of New Hampshire had a safety inspection. Of that number, 173,428 vehicles failed the initial safety inspection. That's 13.57% that would have reached the roadway if not for what Sheriff Macias talked about, which is great professionals that intervened and identified the fact that there was something wrong with the vehicle that the operator or owner probably wasn't even aware of. When we talk about complaints, we received 23 complaints in calendar year 2024. relating to inspections. And as we heard from the Attorney General's testimony, some of those complaints are that somebody received a sticker on the car and felt as though maybe they shouldn't have. Some are the alternative. When they are the alternative and there's a complaint on an inspection station, we refer those to the New Hampshire State Police Troop G to do an audit of the inspection station. If there is something that comes back where a mechanic didn't do the job properly or overall isn't doing the job properly, or the inspection station isn't following the appropriate laws and rules, then those requests for a hearing come to me. I sign those and they go to the Department of Safety Hearings Bureau, and the inspection station has their hearing. That can result in no action. That can result in a fine. It can result in a suspension, remedial training, or in some cases could result in the inspection station having to close. But we take those matters seriously and we follow up on those. The state police were kind enough to provide me with the information for 2024. They conducted 490 audits of inspection stations around the state. And those are proactive, the vast majority, with the small exception of the reactive that I mentioned. I also want to talk about what Amanda Grapponi Osmer talked about here, and that is transparency. We're at a time where inspection stations around the state and around the country are leveraging technology more than ever before, and I've seen it firsthand. Amanda was kind enough to invite me up to her Mazda shop here in Concord within the last couple of years, and I saw firsthand, if you're in the waiting area and your car is being inspected, you can look right through the window into the service area and see the inspection taking place. But if that's not enough, you get a video afterwards with the mechanic that conducted your inspection, going through the different points of the inspection and label them green, yellow, or red. Green, it passed. Medium, yellow, you might have some work to do, but it's a pass for today. Or red, it's a failure. I also heard from one of the mechanics when we were there that what ends up happening is there's trust that's built through that process. And so because of that, repairs are made right there at the shop because you saw what needed to be repaired. And I think that that's amazing. So why would we want to do away with a program when industry is trying to rise to the occasion and make it the best it's ever been? We didn't have this technology 20 years ago to be able to produce it the way they are now. So I think they're absolutely on the right track. And the last thing I would say is collaboration. You know, House Transportation over the last couple of years wanted some things done with the industry to give residents an opportunity to file a complaint, make sure that they had that. So we talked about better signage and all the inspection stations around the state. And what we came up with collaboratively with the state police, with Gordon Darby, our vendor, was to update the vehicle inspection report so that right there, pronounced on the report, there's a number that if you don't agree with the inspection, you can make that call. And that was implemented in July of 2024. So people that don't feel like the inspection was proper have an avenue of relief, and that comes to the DMV. And again, that will result in an audit by the state police. And I think, Sheriff Macias talked about study committee. I will say about 2 years ago, I've been in this position for just over 3 years. The inspection bill is always a very important one to public safety. But I was hoping for a study committee on this a couple years ago. And the first phone call I made was to Sheriff Macias because he is a subject matter expert and his heart is in the right place and he wants to make sure we're doing the right for public safety and customers. And I said to him, Chuck, there's going to be a study committee. Love to have you on that. And he absolutely wanted to be part of it. I don't know of any study committee. If there was one, I wasn't part of it. So if this bill ends up resulting in a study committee, our commitment, meaning the Department of Safety's commitment to all of you, is that we look forward to that conversation and trying to make it the best it can be. So with that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Senator Waters. No, sure.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. So, I overheard I was getting a brake job yesterday, but it's a plug-in electric car, and it is very clear that because of dynamic braking, that as we see more and more electric vehicles, we'd better have their brakes inspected more on a good regular schedule.
Senator, that's a great question, sir. And I became aware of that through testimony on bills similar to this in the House. And I've heard from great mechanics from AutoFair who came in and talked about just that, there's more friction because of the weight of the vehicle, both on the brakes, brake pads, and on the tires themselves. And I want to thank Jason LaCroix from AutoFair, who I believe is still here, who was kind enough within the last couple of years to show me outside of his facility in Manchester stacks of tires that have been taken off of vehicles through the annual safety inspection. And that to me was a visual I'll never forget. But yes, sir, the electric vehicle, and I put that in my written testimony, there are some concerns there with quicker wear.
Just one more, Mr. Chairman. So, you know, we heard earlier about the potential financial hit to the highway fund and so on. But part of the particular concern about that is that we now will be asking the state police to perform inspections. And then the other side about what the state police duties are, we heard testimony earlier that auto shops were scamming people, but you said 490 audits were done?
That's right, sir.
And do you feel that that the state police and your department would be aware or be able to deal effectively if there were scamming going on?
Absolutely. And there are times in select instances where we'll have somebody that will make a complaint or raise a concern. The audit will be done, and they were right. And that's when we send it over to hearings, and then there's action that's taken by DOS hearings to make sure that that inspection station gets on the right track. But they're relatively rare. We don't deal with a lot of them. We don't, 23 documented complaints that have come through. And just one other thing, Senator, in my written testimony on the electric vehicles, I did have a breakdown done on that. So you can see that going back to 2023, every year the number of electric vehicle registrations is increasing in the state of New Hampshire. So we have more and more electric vehicles that are reaching the roadway, and yet we're talking about getting rid of a program that your question was a great one. It exemplifies why we need it more than ever.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Right. Senator McHugh.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Director Marasco. I'm glad to hear there's only 23 complaints. What I'm interested in is the 13.5% or so failure rate and the 173,428 vehicles that failed. Is there any way to drill down and know of those what percentage were life safety risk failures where the vehicle was at an imminent risk of causing harm to the occupant or another, causing an accident, a critical accident, and what were nuisance type failures that we heard described in other testimony?
That's a great question, Senator. I can look into that. The statistics and numbers that are provided in the written testimony, Steve Smith from Gordon Darby, he's our point of contact for the vendor, does a great job. He provided those. I can certainly speak with him to see if there's a way to drill down even further.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
We're at noon. We're going to bring up three more just to keep going. And since he was mentioned, Jason LaCroix, if he's here. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you so much for having me. Jason LaCroix, live in Manchester, born and raised in New Hampshire. Been in the car business, been at AutoFair for 30 years. So I live the car business. I spend a lot of time in the service department, spend a lot of time talking to customers. And every year that this comes up, I question why in the world would we not want to have an annual safety inspection? So I've done some research and I've asked some people, why are you in favor of this? And I just think there's some misinformation. One of the big ones is the failure rate of the state inspections is so low that we don't really need them. As Director Marasco just said, it was 13%. So that doesn't mean that 87% passed. The rest of the cars came in, needed tires, they put new tires on the car, they left it passed. Car comes in, it needs brakes. Put brakes in the car, it leaves it passed. If there is CO2 that is coming out of the tailpipe and you fix that, then it passes. So many of the vehicles actually do need state inspection items, and they are done, and the customer leaves with a state inspection sticker, and the car is safe. And that is a good thing. The next thing is greed. You hear a lot about greedy dealers. This went around yesterday. So the truth of the matter is, we are greedy. We're car dealers. We want to sell cars. We want to service cars. We want to maintain cars. So that makes us competitive. We work very, very hard to make sure that we are the optimal choice for you to purchase a car, service your car, maintain your car. So the last thing that we want to do is upset customers. That just doesn't make any sense. So if you think that we're greedy, okay, but that makes us innovative. You know, Amanda Grapponi just said that she now does videos, video MPI of the car. We have dealerships that have windows so you can look through so you can come out and see the car. The fact that we're greedy makes us good, innovative, and competitive, which is good for the market. When it comes to state inspections, it's all about safety. We have a responsibility as car dealers to have safe cars on the road. And, you know, talk about greedy. I have a 13-minute commute to my house. I like it to take 13 minutes, not an hour and a half because of an accident. We want safe roads. Next, we can trust people to keep their cars safe. A lot of people are responsible. So the average car on the road is 12.8 years old. So if we all drive cars that are 1, 2, 3 years old, that means we have the same amount of people that are driving cars that are 20 plus years old. They're scary. I put some show and tell you all have in your envelope there. When we talk about bald tires, we're talking some tires are bald. Some tires are so unsafe that you have steel belts showing. We talked a lot about can the state police check the safety of a car? The really only way to check the safety of the car is to put it on a lift. You can't do that on the highway. So if your vehicle is out of line because maybe you hit one of our 8 million potholes, the outside tread of your tire could be perfectly good and the inside of your tread could have steel belt showing. You'll see those in the pictures. Can we trust our people to be responsible? The last picture in there is a C-joint that's holding the wheel onto the car. That is so incredibly unsafe. I'm actually starting to see more and more wheels fly off cars. We don't want that. So we've heard some arguments about, can car dealers take advantage of a customer? Certainly that can happen, but there's so many things that people can do. We have AutoCap, we have the Attorney General, we have the Better Business Bureau. Do a negative online review and I'll call you in an hour. I'm going to fix the problem. So if that happens, there are plenty of ways to get that fixed. Again, we're greedy. We want to sell cars, maintain cars, repair cars. We need to have a good reputation. So we're not going to let that happen. The last one that cracks me up every single year is these other states. New Jersey, Montana.
We're at 3 minutes.
Yes, I'm done. Well, you govern the best state. So let's keep the state safe. That's all I have.
I like that. It's a good wrap. Any questions? Senator Ricciardi.
Thank you for taking my question. So my husband just turned 70, so he went to get his car inspected. And he would not have gone if he didn't have to get the inspection. And we go somewhere we trust, we're very reputable. And he needed, brakes were gone and tires. So if he didn't go in for that inspection, what are the potential hazards of him continuing to drive with completely worn out brakes and tires?
The accidents that we see, the cause of the accident is usually weather or speed or distracted driving or under the influence. It's often because there's something wrong with the car. If it rains out, there's more accidents. Is it because we're more distracted or is it because we have bald tires? Drive in the state of Massachusetts, go down to Boston on a rainy day. You have a good chance you're gonna find yourself, in a delay. It's because you need good tires on your cars. You need good brakes and tires. And I fully support a study because some of the things you probably don't need to do. The safety things we need to do, and it's our responsibility to make sure we fight for that.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it. Is Don Bennett still here?
It's Dan.
Dan. It says Dan. All right. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Dan Bennett, President of the New Hampshire Auto Dealers Association. NHADA is a trade association for the motor vehicle industry here in New Hampshire. 500 businesses, 14,000 employees in most all corners and communities of the state. I will be brief. I'm going to bounce around my testimony because I'm just going to respond to some things I've heard, and I have 7 copies that I'll submit when I'm done. But please take a look at the handout because it's filled with a lot of factual information and data, not some of the anecdotes that we've heard earlier. This program benefits consumers, it supports law enforcement, and it keeps people safe on the roads. All of our neighboring states, all of our New England states have inspections for a reason. We have a unique microclimate. We have freeze and thaw cycles. We have frost heaves. We literally brine our roads with liquid salt. They don't do that in Jersey and Texas and some of those other states that I've heard. So that's important to note. There's severity maps out there that show the weather in the variety of the New England states. The inspection process helps consumers in that it IDs deficiencies that are under warranty, which are then covered by the manufacturer, not from the consumer's pocket. It's important to note also that one of the very valuable changes to the inspection process that happened a handful of years ago was when the test is done, a safety recall check through the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, NHTSA. A NHTSA safety recall check is done. In 2023, it found 21,000 open recalls for customers' vehicles. In 2024, it was 10,000. And in 2025, we're already at 465. Recalls happen all the time. Toyota just announced 100,000 frame recalls. Ford announced one yesterday, and it was the second time. They found a fix and they had to refix it. So a second recall came out. So this isn't a little postcard that comes in your mailbox that you hope doesn't get missed. This is on the inspection report. It's put in front of the customer for that specific vehicle, not 2015 GMC Acadias, Mr. Bennett's 2015 GMC Acadia, that specific vehicle tied to its 17-digit VIN number. So it's an incredibly valuable component of the program that helps the consumer. I heard, a little bit about, no conclusive data, and I just want to read off, 2 points. In July of 2023, the Journal of Transportation Engineering did the most comprehensive study to date, all 50 states over a 44-year period, and it found that states with safety inspections have 5.5% fewer annual fatalities than those without. That is conclusive data. We can look at states that have gotten rid of their inspection program. Mississippi repealed its program in 2015, and in the next year, it had an increase of 77 fatal crashes. Utah ended their program in 18. The next year, an 11.6% increase in vehicle failures due to crashes due to vehicle equipment failures. So I heard someone mention about rust before. When we changed the rule, when the state changed the rule at rust a handful of years ago in 2019, it went into effect. It was shown to stations, and it caused a 30% reduction in rust failures of the nearly 1.6 million vehicles. So only 6,000 vehicles failed due to rust, due to that change that was made and spread out to industry. I did hear Senator McHugh's question about the types of failures, whether they're what you would call, I think, life safety issues or critical safety issues. I'll mention this. Director Marasco said 14% failure rate. I believe that's the floor, not the ceiling, because of the point that Mr. LaCroix made where they're fixed and the vehicle's never marked as a failure. I quite frankly do what my technician tells me, because that's what they're the experts at, not me. But as it relates to last year, 78,000 vehicles failed for brakes, 51,000 failed for steering, and 43,000 failed for worn or damaged tires. Those are the top three. Those are the big ones, and those are the things we're talking about. So
you could wrap, that'd be great.
Yes, sir, will do. And then just to answer Senator Waters' question before, you talked about protections provided to consumers at the sale of used vehicles. If the dealer conducts an inspection without clear regulatory guidance, the customer has a safety issue, the dealer could be liable for misrepresenting the issue. That's a really big deal, even if they acted in good faith. And eliminating the requirements that inspections be conducted by certified mechanics also gets rid of the standards to which you should inspect to. When the consumer asks for that inspection prior to sale, there's no guidance. So that's problematic as well. So, thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. As I said, I bounced around my testimony. I wanted to be as brief as possible, but I wanted to respond to some of all your inquiries.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, appreciate you being here. We're going to do one more speaker, and that will be Donald Pike. And I apologize to those who signed up that we didn't get to. Yeah, we'll be back at it Tuesday. And we'll schedule it right after executive session, so probably 10 a.m. All right, I don't think Mr. Pike is here. Is Alex Katrubas here? Ah. You are the last speaker, sir. Good afternoon.
So no pressure to be fast. No. I'll be under 3 minutes for sure.
Okay. Everyone has said they would be, but very few will.
I promise I will.
Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Alex Katrubis. I'm here representing the Associated General Contractors of New Hampshire. I'll provide the written testimony, but just a few highlights. I promise I'll be brief. Our association represents building and highway and bridge contractors. We are opposed to this bill because of the decrease in funding that the highway fund would experience if this bill was to be adopted. A few folks had mentioned Texas. When Texas repealed their inspection program, they actually kept the fee in place because the Texas legislature recognized the loss in revenue that the state would experience. I also will include some information in my testimony about recent highway projects that are funded through the highway fund that are under $3 million. It's not a significant amount of money. The highway fund's about $283 million, but every dollar counts. And if we start reducing revenue, it's just going to make things more and more difficult for the Department of Transportation to fund the important projects that they have in their budget. A lot of House members testified this morning, and we know that they're making a lot of reductions to the governor's budget. And again, any reduction in revenue without a replacement source is just going to make things more and more difficult for the Senate Finance Committee to do its work. And obviously, the chairman and Senator Waters are going to have to deal with that. But University System of New Hampshire, there's a 30% cut to them. The union leader said deep cuts affecting Medicaid and disabled services. Municipal Association on Friday, their lead story was cuts and concerns on House budget reductions. Department of Corrections, 200 employees unfunded by the House. So we don't need to reduce revenue without a replacement source. So again, I would ask you to just look at the GNC agenda, $3 million. While it might not sound like a lot to some people, there are a lot of things that are done in the highway fund, and $3 million could really, in this budget environment that we're going to be facing, every dollar is going to count. So we'd ask you not to reduce state revenue. So thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Any questions? All right, appreciate you being here. I'm going to close the hearing on House Bill 649 until next week. Do I have a motion to adjourn? And all in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? We are adjourned.